Friends, the Lord is with you. Thank you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. After John's arrest, Jesus appeared in Galilee, proclaiming the good news of God. This is the time of fulfillment. The reign of God is at hand. Change your hearts and your minds and believe in the good news. Now, while going along by the Sea of Galilee, Jesus saw the brothers, Simon and Andrew, casting their net into the sea. They fished by trade. Jesus said to them, "Come, follow me, I will make you fishers of all." They immediately abandoned their nets and followed Jesus. Proceeding a little further along, Jesus saw the brothers James and John, the sons of Zebedee. They too were in their boat, putting their nets in order. Immediately Jesus called to them, and they left their father Zebedee, standing in the boat along with the hired help. And they went off in the company of Jesus. My friends, the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. I heard a really wonderful joke last night, and it goes like this. When we're talking about eternity, there's three things that are really, really important. Location, location, location. That's good. Location, location. The reign of God is at hand. Come and follow me. Those are the lines from the scripture. The reign of God is at hand. Come follow me. There's one thing, my friends, in my life that's been a constant source of mystery and awe that I have encountered as I journey through this thing that you and I call life. And that mystery and awe is generated by three very simple words. Words that you and I have probably heard over and over again for all these years. But words which I fundamentally believe have a transformative power. That's three words: called by God. What does it mean? What does it mean to be called by God? And what does it mean to experience being called by God? It seems to be much more, if you will, to let me use this analogy, it seems to be much more of a rose garden than it does to be a garden of mums. In other words, there's a lot of pain and a lot of sacrifice and a lot of suffering coupled with some of the most beautiful and poignant connections with the divine that I believe you and I can ever experience in life. If there's one conclusion I can reach, it's this: God's call is always consistent, and most often, it's not very convenient. It's always consistent, but not very convenient. If you doubt that, just ask Jonah. That was a great story to start with tonight. If you don't believe that God's call is consistent, ask Jonah, because it's definitely not convenient. He gets spit out on the shore by a big fish. Ask Moses, ask Abraham, ask Sarah, or Mary, or Joseph, or Jesus, or John, or Dorothy Day, or Oscar Romero, or Buddha, or Muhammad, or Nelson Mandela, or Archbishop Desmond Tutu. They would all tell you that God's call is consistent, and it's definitely not convenient. Usually when we experience God's call in our life, our first experience of that call is very similar to Jonah. We tend to run away. We say, no, not me. I can remember even experiencing the call to priesthood in my own life, and I thought to myself, there's absolutely no way this will ever happen. Surprise. There's absolutely no way this is going to happen. And usually, very similar to Jonah, we ask ourselves questions like, why me? Why now? Why not them? Love to blame somebody else. Why not her? Why not someone else? I'm too tired, I'm too old, I'm too young. Haven't we heard all of this in Scripture too? It's just wonderful. I'm too tired, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too wounded, I'm too wore out. Maybe I'm too wounded to even possibly believe that I could bring hope or healing to anybody else. But the unique thing about being called is that when it's authentic, it's very first of all repulsed by the one who receives the call. It's at least rejected in some, and then it moves from that to being tested, and then it's confirmed, and then it's encouraged. But it's still a garden of roses, not a garden of thorns. There's a unique reality that applies to not only individual call, but I believe applies to community call as well. I believe when a community is called by God, it too does the same process. It too says, who, us, and then it goes through all the pain of growth and all those very same things that I reiterated before. That we go through the denial and why us, and why not somebody else, why not somebody else. And then we, like everybody else, we begin to produce new roses and new fruits in our lives. And that shows forth the deep, confusing faith that you and I end up living through the struggles and the trials and the tribulations of life. Remember, God's call is always consistent. It's just not very darn convenient. Today, actually, we celebrate today 4 years as a faith community. 4 years as a community of faith. And as I look back at that, I look at the reality of God's call in our midst, and I actually believe it is an authentic call because we have been through those things and we continue to be through those things. We're not a perfect community of faith. My friends, there isn't one. Surprise. We didn't form ourselves as a perfect community of faith. We're not a perfect community of faith, but what we are is a people who gather in the midst of the struggles and the painful realities of life, who point to the roses for each other, pointing to the hope that comes from the pain, pointing to the hope that comes from the pruning, because we know no matter what, God is here and God does love us, and that in spite of the confusion and the fear and the frustration, the rose will indeed bloom. I bought them tonight. I put them up there. Roses will indeed bloom, even though we experience that pain. All week long, I've been asking myself this question. What is it that makes the Spirit of Hope unique? How do we know that we're being called by God? What are we being called to do in the reign of God? Our call, I believe, is summarized actually in our mission statement, which says, we are inviting and inspiring all people to live in faith. We are called, my friends, to be a community that warmly accepts anyone exactly where they are and how they are, and to encourage them to see the roses, even when they're being beaten up and bloodied by the thorns of life. One of the greatest gifts of our community is that we're a bit unique in that we don't pretend to be perfect. I'm not saying anything about anybody else. I'm saying we don't pretend to be perfect because we aren't. One of the things that makes us unique is that we're willing to openly dialogue with one another, to discuss and wrestle with and pray about how God is being in our midst, not saying anyone has to do it in the exact same way. Throughout that struggle, we try as best we can to sprinkle it with a little bit of humor, because in that doing so, we assist one another in the healing of those wounds, and we assist one another in growing in our relationship with God. God's call is always consistent. It's just not very convenient. 4 years ago, a local church leader relayed to me these very words. He looked me right in the eye and he said, if you leave, meaning go away, not leave. And they were all in, I had already left. If you leave, we'll leave you alone. And I said, I don't believe God is calling me somewhere else. I believe God is calling me here. God is calling me here. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for affirming that call. Thanks for allowing me to walk with you, and thank you for allowing each other to walk with one another. Thanks for pointing to the roses when the wounds and the hurt and the pain were almost overwhelming. That, my friends, means that the time of fulfillment is here. God's plan, God's working in our world is indeed being lived out in our very lives each and every day. As we pray in that beautiful Eucharistic prayer, then will all creation be one. All divisions among us will be healed, and we shall join together in singing God's praises. My friends, that is our call. That is our mission, and I believe that is our hope. To proclaim the good news of God's never-ending love, of God's compassion, of God's grace, in the good times and in the challenging times as well. As we step forward, I hope that we can live into the reign of God. You see, I believe that the great paradox of faith is this, that we can't live into the reign of God if we're shackled by the past, and we can't live it if we're manipulating and controlling and fashioning the future. The great paradox of faith, the great paradox of those words, come and follow me, is that they're spoken right here in this present time, right here, right now. Right now in living and how we are living the reign of God. This, my friends, is the time of fulfillment. Jesus says to us, just as real as he says to Thomas and Andrew and Simon and all those earlier people, just as definitively he says to you and I, come and follow me. The question is, how do we do that? How do we live in the time of fulfillment? Sure that God is calling us. But how do we live then? I'd like to offer you this reflection, at least as one way to consider living the Word of God and living into the kingdom of God. It's entitled, Please Understand Me, and I can't tell you who wrote it. Its authorship is debated, let's say that. So to whomever did write it, I'd like to say thank you, because it served me as a model for ministry for many years. Remember, God's call is unwaveringly consistent, and it's most often not convenient. To each and every one of you, thank you. Thanks for living God's call in your life and for allowing us to walk with you. And the title of this piece, I really believe it touches about who and how we can be in the world for each other. It's entitled, Please Understand Me. It goes like this: don't be fooled by me, don't be fooled by the face that I wear, for I wear a mask. I wear 1,000 masks, and none of them are me. Pretending, you see, is an art that's second nature with me, but don't be fooled. For God's sakes, don't be fooled. I give you the impression that I'm secure, that all is sunny and unruffled with me, both within and without, that confidence is my name, and coolness my game, that the water's calm, and that I'm in command, and that I need no one. But don't believe me, because my surface may seem smooth, but my surface is my mask, my ever-varying, ever-concealing mask. Beneath dwells the real me in confusion, in fear, in aloneness, but I hide this. I don't want anybody to know about it. I panic, in fact, at the thought of my weakness and the fear of being exposed. And that's why I frantically create a mask to hide behind, a nonchalant, sophisticated facade to help me pretend, to shield me from the glance that knows. But such a glance is precisely my salvation, my only salvation, and I know it. That is, if it's followed by acceptance, if it's followed by love. You see, it is the only thing that can liberate me from myself, from my own self-built prison walls, from the barriers that I so painstakingly erect. It's the only thing that will assure me of what I can assure myself, that I really am worth something. But I don't tell you this, I don't dare, I'm afraid to. I'm afraid your glance won't be followed by acceptance, that it won't be followed by love. I'm afraid you'll think less of me, that you'll laugh, and your laugh will kill me. I'm afraid that deep down I'm nothing, that I'm just no good, and that you'll see this and reject me. So I know I'm playing my game, my desperate pretending game with a facade of assurance without, but a trembling child within. And so begins the glittering but empty parade of masks, and my life becomes a front. And I idly chatter to you in the suave tones of surface talk. I tell you everything that's really nothing, and nothing of what's really everything, of what's crying within me. So when I'm going through my routine, do not be fooled by what I'm saying. Please listen carefully and try to hear what I'm not saying. What I'd like to be able to say, what for survival I need to say, but what I can't say. I don't like to hide. I don't like to play the superficial and phony games. I really want to be genuine, to be spontaneous, and to be me, but you can help me. You can hold out your hand even when that's the last thing I seem to want or need. You can wipe away from my eyes the blank stare of the living dead. You can call me into aliveness each time. Each time you're kind and gentle and encouraging. Each time you simply try to understand because you care. My heart begins to grow wings. Very small wings and very feeble wings, but wings. With your power of empathy and compassion, you can breathe life into me, and I want you to know that. I want you to know how important you are to me, how you can be the creator of the person that is me if you choose to. You can break down the walls behind which I tremble. You can remove the masks. You can release me from the shallow world of panic and uncertainty, from my lonely, self-built prison if you choose to. Please choose to. Don't pass me by. It won't be easy for you because a long convection of worthlessness builds very strong walls. And the nearer you approach to me, the blinder I may strike back. It is irrational, my friends, but I know it's irrational, and I fight against the very thing that I cry out for. But I'm told, and I believe, that love is stronger than the strongest walls. And in that lies my hope, my only hope. Please try to take down those walls with firm hands, but with gentle hands, for a child is very sensitive. Who am I, you may wonder? I'm someone you know very, very well. For I am every person you will ever meet, and I am you as well.